Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ellie. I'm from the team at Glenara Libraries, and I'm so delighted to see so many faces here in the audience this afternoon. And for anyone watching on the live stream at home, welcome to you also. Before we go any further, I'd like to acknowledge that Glenara rests on the ancestral lands of the Bunurong Bunurong and the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Eastern Kulin Nation. Pay my respects to all elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge and uphold the continuing connection to land, waterways and community. And I extend my respects to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people here with us today. So this event today, Strength of Hope, is proudly part of the 2022 Glenara Storytelling Festival, and Glenara Libraries has been proud to partner with the Melbourne Holocaust Museum to bring you this event today. Storytelling Festival is about halfway through its program, and there's still lots of great events coming up, so please do grab yourself a program on the way out and see what's coming up over the next week. So now to the reason we are all gathered here today, to hear the incredible story behind the writing of the incredible story of Abram Goldberg with Fiona Harris. So a bit of housekeeping, if you could kindly turn your mobile phone off to silent, cue hands into the bag. So today's event is hosted by Jayne Josem, CEO and Director of the Melbourne Holocaust Museum and Chair of the Australian Holocaust Museum Alliance. Jayne has been with the museum since 2002, originally in curatorial and collection roles. In 2018, she was appointed Director which is excitingly estimated for completion later this year. So without further ado, over to you, Jayne.
Thank you, Ellie. Good afternoon, and it's wonderful to see so many people here, to know there are many people passionate about storytelling. At the Melbourne Holocaust Museum, where I'm the CEO, our principal purpose is to really share and amplify survivor stories as a catalyst for greater understanding and acceptance of others. Avram Goldberg is a Holocaust survivor who's volunteered at the Holocaust Museum since its early days. That's almost 40 years. He's been a treasurer, museum guide, and is still an active board director and museum guide. Welcome, Avram.
Thank you, Jayne.
And I've had the pleasure to work with Avram for 20 years now, over 20 years, so I feel extremely fortunate. Fiona Harris is an accomplished actor and writer who I've only spent a few hours with, but those have all been a delight. I was really overjoyed when this match was made. From the moment I met Fiona, I just thought brilliant. And I was heartened that finally Avram's story was going to be captured and shared in the written form. So today, the discussion, the conversation, is really about that process of capturing Avram's story, and it really is a remarkable one. Rather than going into a lot of the detail about his life and those stories, because we obviously want you all to go out and buy the book and read about his experiences in there. So the focus today is on how the book came about and how Avram and Fiona have worked together over the last year. So I'm going to start with a bit of a conversation. So I'm going to ask Abi, or Avram. You've spoken to thousands and have really touched thousands of students and others over the years. Most of your colleagues, or many of your colleagues, were writing books already. Why had you not written a book yet? What were you waiting for?
Yes, well, can you repeat it? I didn't hear properly.
Why hadn't you written a book until this time? You're 97 years old.
Oh, well, there's a simple reason. Because I had a friend, her name was Hava Rosenfarb, and she wrote her memoirs in 3 volumes. Every volume was over 600 pages. Well, and I did think, how can I fit in my life story in just, 40,000 words? It's impossible. So, we started it, and I want to thank Alan Reed for helping me out in the beginning. And then Well, on the scene came the publisher and offered me a good deal. I couldn't accept. And as I said, because there will be no limit, but there is still limits. Then it started, and so I gave it this beautiful Fiona Harris and her family. And we become really very close and friends. And when I make friends with my family, it's for life. And this was the only reason why I didn't start many years before to publish my memoirs.
So I believe it's 3 volumes, is that right? So Fiona, what did you think when publisher Martin Hughes from Affirma Press approached you with the idea of writing a Holocaust survivor memoir? So talk through, up until you met Abby, what were your thoughts?
Well, when Martin rang me and asked if I'd be interested in writing the memoir of a Holocaust survivor who was 97 and who lived around the corner from me, there was a mixture of thoughts and feelings. Obviously, my overwhelming thought was yes, I would be absolutely honoured to write this man's story. The next thought was, I'm not Jewish. I'm a white woman, non-Jewish white woman who grew up in the western suburbs of Melbourne, attended an all-girls Catholic school, didn't know the first thing about what it meant to be Jewish or to grow up in a world where my community had suffered like Abram's had. So there was part of me that thought, how could a girl like me, raised in this free, safe environment, possibly write this man's story, and what would the reaction to that be? And another thought was, for the last 20 years, all the writing I've been doing has been quite light-hearted, you might say. Lots of comedy and light drama for TV, kids' books, kids' TV shows, warm and funny adult fiction novels, and all of that is obviously very, very different to this. But as I said, my overwhelming thought was, yes, I would absolutely love the privilege and honour of having this job. And when I told Martin all these thoughts and how I was feeling, the first thing he said was, Abram won't care that you're not Jewish, because he's not like that in the slightest. And as I very quickly learned, that was right, because Abram, as he says all the time, there's one race, and that's the human race. Abram does not care about ethnicity or whether you're Jewish or not, or colour or race or any of that. So yeah, that was kind of what was going through my head when I was first asked, until I met him.
So I want to ask each of you about your first meeting, and
You go first.
did you have a positive connection straight away? Was there chemistry there?
Well, when I first saw my future, when I saw first my helper to write my book, well, I saw her smile, and I realized immediately that this is something going to happen. Because, well, and like Fiona is saying, that we fell in love.
Sesh
We
is here, come
absolutely
on.
did. And Sesh is here.
Yes.
I don't know, this is
Well,
appropriate.
he is my, first love.
Yeah. He's a charmer.
And what did you think?
I was very nervous, and the first time we actually saw each other was on a screen, because I think it was lockdown number 56 or something a year ago, and I was very, very nervous before the Zoom, and then as soon as Abram, and it was Charlie and Helen's faces all popped up on the screen, these beautiful, warm, smiling faces, I just instantly relaxed, and I thought, this is going to be okay, and we all got along, and thank God they gave me the tick of approval. And then the first time I met Abram in person was at his flat, which is literally a 3-minute walk from our house, which was very handy. And we sat around his kitchen table with Charlie and Helen, and it was more of a get to know you that first session. And by the time I left, all my nerves were gone, and I was just so excited and feeling very lucky to have this job, because they're all beautiful people.
And here we are.
And here we are.
So just to fill everyone in, Sesha is Avram's beautiful wife, who's on screen there, and Helen and Charlie are their children, who were very much involved in the whole process of approving and coming on board this journey of writing the book. And it was during COVID, so yes, being around the corner and able to go for walks was immensely important to that. So Avram, I've got a question for you. How difficult was it for you to have this lovely stranger prodding you for all sorts of details about a harrowing part of your life? How did you feel? Because I think you've kept a lot of these details locked away, and suddenly you had someone coming asking you all sorts of questions.
Oh, well, Fiona can testify that I'm not an easy person. Well, I like everything be just accurate, because we have so many deniers what will look at everything and try to find something what it doesn't, what seems to them is right. And you ask my children, so I will tell you, we had a very hot discussion. Well.
Do you want me to talk about what it was like?
Oh,
Getting it out of you?
Oh, well, eventually we are here.
We are.
And it's going to be published in 2 months.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
and I'm looking forward, and I hope you're all looking forward that the book is going to be published. Unfortunately, one of my very close friends, what I went through with him in the ghetto and after the war, and I actually took him out from Poland, died just over a week ago in Los Angeles. This was my last friend.
And there's a lot of stories about him in the book
yes.
too.
What's his name?
Well, I'm not going to divulge anything.
No,
Okay.
So
it's Jack.
it's Jack,
Yeah.
well, Yankee Levin.
Yeah.
He was in Australia for 10 years, and then he left for America, and the rest will be in the book.
And to answer your question as well, Jayne, as Abram said, there was a man named Alan Reed who Abram worked with a couple of years ago, and he managed to get down about 20,000 words of Abram's life, which was an outline, an overview of lots of dates and places and you know, kind of the bones of Abram's life. So that was a fantastic jumping off point for me as a writer to have that in the beginning as a resource. And then in terms of structuring the book and, you know, thinking about that, and talk to a friend of mine, I think who's here today, Mark Stracey, who, if I can see him, who helped me talk about structure, and my husband Mike McLeish helped as well. But then in terms of actually getting the story out of Abram, we started off easy in terms of we started talking about the present and Sesha and how they were all, what they were all doing now. But yes, as Abram says, he is very much about facts and figures and order and routine and very practical. So because Martin had said to me that the reason he wanted me for this project, when I said all that stuff about I haven't written this kind of thing before, was because he knows a lot of the stuff I've written in the past, there's a lot of heart in it. I'm very big on heart. That's very important to me in all my things that I've ever written. And he wanted a lot of heart in this book because it's a love story between Sesha and Abram, and it's the most extraordinary, beautiful story. And so Martin wanted a lot of heart, which obviously meant we had to crack into Abram's thoughts and feelings and emotions. And that's not something Abram has done much, or he doesn't really do that. He doesn't talk about that sort of stuff. So we had a few sessions with vodka. Abram's favourite vodka, which is bison grass. Thank you, Charlie, for providing that. So Charlie would come over with the vodka. Sure, it was 11 a.m., but that's fine. And we'd sit for those specific sessions where it was, it'd been 6 months by this point that we'd been working together, and we wanted to start digging more into how Abram was feeling through all of these harrowing and unimaginable experiences. We did a few shots. And that helped, didn't it?
Yes, and thank you, Fiona.
Yeah. I'm always happy to provide you with vodka.
Okay.
Always. Especially bison
Well, I'm
grass.
accepting it.
It was what they used to call medicine. When I first worked at the centre, there'd be, do you want some medicine? And this vodka would come out. So, but I've got to say, because Aby tells his story to students, and he does this every week, and I've heard his story many times before, but when I started reading the drafts of the book, I realised, what an amazing job you'd done to penetrate that armour and get through some of the stories and there's so much in here that I learnt, and it's very exciting that this will be shared with more people shortly. The book is due to be released in a month or so, and I'll tell you more about that a bit later. But Aby, I want to know how you've managed to remember so much and so many details of events that happened so many years ago. You're an encyclopedia of knowledge when it comes to facts, dates, places, and you're a stickler for them, obviously. So tell us about that.
Oh, well, yes, I'm blessed with a good memory. This is simple. And I took notice all those years being enslaved in the ghetto, and in the camps, I make notes in my mind. And this helped me a lot. Well, and the rest, like I said before, I'm not going to talk about now. I can keep a secret.
But all the secrets are revealed in the book.
Well.
But not here today.
No, not here today.
So to focus a bit more on the writing and the book itself, Fiona, you've really captured, that was the other thing, you've really captured Aby's voice so well. So even though I know that you've been involved in writing it, you've done an amazing job of capturing his voice. So tell us about how you managed to do that.
Well, obviously spending a lot of time together around the kitchen table, having all those sessions, recording them. So I'd record every session and then go home and transcribe the sessions. So I was always hearing Abram's voice. That obviously helped, but also I watched, Abram's done a few testimonials at the Holocaust Museum, video testimonials, so I watched all of those. I think it was about 5 or 6 hours worth, maybe more. I watched all of those, and I think spending time together socially, our families have spent a lot of time with each other over the last year, and that really helps as well, just seeing Abram in his home environment with his family and everyone he loves and how they all interact with him, and just getting an overall sense of who he is and the man he is. And I think that was very helpful, just being around him and listening to him, and the recording. Sometimes I'd have to send Charlie, if for whatever reason I was away or he was away, and I'd send questions that I wanted him to ask Abram, and he would record himself asking his dad the questions and then send me the audio recordings. And my favourite was which I listened to about 10 times, and I could not stop laughing because Charlie's dog, Woody, would not stop barking. And so Charlie's asking his dad these very serious questions, and then every few seconds he's going, "Woody! Woody!" And you could hear Abram just giggling in the background. And so that kind of thing, you spend a lot of time with someone, you get to understand the rhythm of their speech and how they talk and the words they use. So I think that's how.
And in terms of the story, talk to us about the decision to include and how you've included Sesha in the story.
Sesha is obviously a massive part of Abram's story. They met when Sesha was 17 and Abram was 22 in Belgium. And so, of course, Sesha had to be a big part of the book because their lives have been spent together for this many years. And so at one point, I went and picked Sesha up from Gary Smorgon House, where she lives, and brought her back to our house. And my husband and I made her a cup of tea, and we sat around the table, and I recorded Sesha and asked her a lot of questions. So in the book, after they meet, at that point, we start having Sesha's voice as well. And I literally just pretty much transcribed what Sesha told me in her voice, because it's such a beautiful voice and she's just such a beautiful person, and I wanted the essence of her in the book.
She's smiling right now. And tell me, Fiona, how is it possible to find hope in such a tragic story?
Well, look, I think you just have to look at this beautiful face and these beautiful faces and the family they've created and the love that's there. And he is just the most positive person, and he made a choice when he came here after everything he'd been through. He wasn't going to let that dictate the way he lived his life. He wanted to be positive. You should talk about that. When you came here, your attitude.
Well, I don't want to divulge what is in the book.
I think we've scared him into not saying anything. But you came here and you made a decision that you were going to be happy and be positive, isn't that right?
Well, I realized it when I survived. There's no other way. And if I'm talking, I'm not talking only for myself. I'm talking for the 6 million what can't talk for themselves. And this was my objective in life. And I'm still doing it to this day. And I will do it as long as I live and I'm able to do it.
Yeah. So I know we're not divulging anything today because we want you all to buy the book, but I have made a little PowerPoint presentation that's kind of like a trailer for the book, so you can see what the stories, or what, get a sense of what is in the book. So Ellie, if you're ready. Lodz, Poland is where Abram grew up. That's his childhood, and so pre-war, that's Lodz, Poland. So we go into, when we open the book, we talk about his childhood in Lodz. And there are his parents, his beautiful parents. And we go into stories about Abram growing up with his family, with his parents, and also with his 3 sisters. So there's a lot of stories in there about Abram's childhood with his sisters and his parents in Lodz before the war. And then, obviously, the war came, and then Abram spent 4 years in the Lodz ghetto. So we have there's obviously a lot of chapters in the book about that and what the experiences he had in there, and what happened with his family. I think there's another photo. Yeah, so these photos that you're looking at, this was an amazing source. I think we've also got an image of it up there. Did you give me this, Charlie? Yeah. This came from the Goldberg family, and this book was just an amazing resource. I read the entire book. It's quite thick. And this was just really important for me, obviously, to get as much of a sense as possible of that world. You gave me that. And Jayne, you gave me this as well, which is Memory Unearthed, and there's some amazing photos in there. So those were very good resources for all of that, the Lodz chapters. And then, that's a photo of, we won't go into details, but Abram was involved with something in the ghetto that involved an illegal radio. That's all we're saying.
Well, I will say one thing about if I can just say one thing. Yeah. So the title of the book, Strength of Hope, actually relates to that radio, because the Lodz ghetto was completely sealed off from any news about what was happening in the war. So you can imagine at that time the Jewish people were imprisoned, but they had no idea whether Germany was losing the war, winning the war, completely cut off. But Avram and his friend Bono were involved in the resistance, and through that they somehow came to have this radio that you saw in the slide before, or a similar one to that one, I should say. And that enabled them to secretly listen and hear about what was going on. And what they heard on D-Day, they heard what happened on D-Day, and the tide of war was changing. The Germans were starting to lose. This gave them hope. Hope was the only thing you could have to keep you going in those times. So being able to hear that news, they're at a point where it's like, I can't go on, I can't go on. That's the strength of hope, knowing there's maybe a chance that we'll get out of this. So I just wanted to say that's where the title came from.
And risking their lives by having that as well, because if they'd been found with that, yeah. And then Abram was sent to Auschwitz. So, yeah, he spent... Do you want to say anything about how long you were there?
Well, in Auschwitz-Birkenau, well, I and my mother was alive when the ghetto was liquidated. Well, and over there I promised, when my mother was torn away from me, and the last word of my mother, I'm not going to tell you now, it's in the book.
You can.
Yes. My mother said to me, she realized that she's not going to get out alive from there. In those few minutes that we were together, she told me, Abram, she told me in Yiddish, Avram, you should do everything humanly possible to survive. And when you will survive, wherever you will find yourself, you should tell what happened. Because by knowing, people will be able to prevent that such a thing will never be repeated anywhere in the world. And I kept the promise. Being in Birkenau, I couldn't write down because that's a lot of reason. So I memorized everything what I saw and experienced, and later on also. But here I am talking to you, and you will be able to read in my book, only not everything, but a lot. Because what I did after the liberation, so you will have to read the book.
And then we have some photos of a very handsome Abram coming up. Look at him. Look at that beautiful, handsome man. So yes, then obviously there's what happened after the war.
This is Jacob Levin. What I said, he died just over a week ago.
On the left?
On the left.
Yeah.
It depends where you sit. Well, died. Well, he wanted to read my memoirs. I promised him I will send it to him. Unfortunately, it wasn't ready. I couldn't send it to him.
Oh, yeah, that's very sad. Oh, hello. That's you. Then the love story begins when Abram met Sesha in Belgium, and there they are at the beach in Belgium. And this is the most beautiful love story you've ever read. It is just extraordinary. So I think we've got some more photos of Abram and Sesha in Belgium. Beautiful, beautiful. Very, very dapper dresses as well. And that handbag that Sesha is holding, do you want to tell them about the handbag?
Well, you tell it. You can tell it.
Abram made that handbag because he was working in a factory that made handbags at the time. So that's in Belgium. And then so they went on a lot of camps. There's a lot in the book about the Bund because Abram's a Bundist and he came from a Bundist family, and you'll learn all about that in the book as well. And they went on a lot of camps, as you can see, post-war. And then they came to Australia. And so then we go into the next phase of Abram's life, having Charlie and Helen in Melbourne. That was Helen. There they are. I love that photo down the bottom. Is my favourite photo of Abram. That he just looks like the coolest dude ever. Look at you. Look. So yeah, we go through the 70s, and then Goldies. There's probably a lot of you here who know this, but they ran a diner in the city called Goldies for 11 years, and there's lots of stories in the book about that time, which was amazing and very, very interesting. Yeah, and there they are.
And just celebrated their 75th wedding anniversary.
They did
Mazel
last
tov.
week. And then they became grandparents. So and they're here. Daniel, Daly and Nastasia. And there they are today. So that's the whole Goldberg clan. And that is, if nothing else, that's the biggest, well, I won't say. That's the best way to say, look at what we did. We created this beautiful family, and yeah, it's amazing. So that's all the stories are in the book, but that gives you an overview of what to expect. What do you think of that? What do you think of that? Did you like my PowerPoint?
Oh, well, it's beautiful. What do you want to say, that I say?
Beautiful.
Well, but I'm always saying the truth.
You are saying the truth. That is the truth. Yeah. So I think, that's.
Avram, what's the main message that you want to leave with this book? What do you want people, what's your message to students every week?
Oh, well. When you will read the book and you want to know more, I will be always open to talk to you in person, because it's a lot more to say that is in the book. So I am open for anybody, anytime. What I'm doing now I'm still talking, even in this pandemic. I was talking to students on Zoom, and I'm talking when it was possible in person. Well, I'm still on the board of the museum at my age. Well, and I hope to contribute as much as I will be able. And like I said before in the beginning, that I've got my memory, and this is my treasure. And also, I want to thank my children, especially my wife, Sasha. Well, she went to her home because my wife loved people, and you know it. And unfortunately, I couldn't provide it in my home. This is why she went there. And well, eventually maybe I will join her, but not yet.
Still too independent.
Yes.
Yes, at 97.
And before I ask anyone, so you still didn't quite answer my question. What are some of the messages that you like to leave with the students that came out of, the harrowing experiences that you have, and yet you talk to students every week?
Oh, well, when I talk to students, and I talked, I didn't count them, but in the tens of thousands. I talked on Zoom even to Sweden, to Finland. I was in Belgium, I was in Sweden, I was invited to schools to talk. Well, it will be in the book, the rest.
And you tell them about, what do you say to students when you say not to hate?
But I'm usually finishing when I'm talking to the student. My message to the student is, well, what we said in the beginning. There's only one race, the human race. No difference, the color of our skin or the color of our hair. What hurts one human being hurts also another. And also remember to the students that you will grow up and you will have all your own families. But not every day in your life will be a sunny day. There will be days what will be overcast. But after an overcast day, the sun will always shine again. And this when usually I'm finished when I'm talking to the students.
Beautiful.
Thank you. I'm not sure if there are roving mics, but I'm just wondering if anyone has a question for either Avram or Fiona about writing the book. We've got one in the front row. Yeah. Here comes a microphone.
She's going to get a microphone.
Yeah.
When you were in the lodge ghetto, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you meet? Did you meet Rumkowski?
Did you meet Rumkowski in the ghetto?
Well, I saw him.
Rumkowski was
Yes.
the Jewish
Well,
leader of the ghetto.
in the book, I'm describing what I think about Rumkowski.
There is in the book there's when Abram had an interaction with him or saw him.
Yes.
Yeah, it's in there.
In the book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other takers? There's someone over there. No, Rachel.
Oh, you have.
Now that the book has been written in English, will there be a Yiddish translation of the book?
Well, it's not up to me. It's not up to me. If there will be a translator and would like to publish it, well, so I know where to apply for it.
That's a really good question,
A
and
lovely idea.
absolutely one that I'll talk to the publisher about, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you. Are you offering to translate? We have a question.
Avram, I'm at the back corner. In your final comment about making sure that we always remember that there's sunshine that follows the day of rain, the day of overcast. I'd like to draw you out on that for a moment. If you had a chance to explain to students who were experiencing harassment or bullying in their playground, in the university, in a situation, and you could somehow more specifically use your experiences to influence what's the right behaviour when you see harassment around you, whether it's racism or another form. Have you got some advice for the generations of today from your life experience?
So just if you've got any advice for if there were kids who were being bullied or harassed in school, what would you maybe say to them?
Oh, well, so I got always the museum to come to, and we will always be glad to talk to them. For example, a lady did write a book about trauma. She lost her husband very young, and she came to the museum, and she wanted to talk to me, and I talked to her. And this actually was the publisher what is publishing my book. And when he read what I said in Cheshire, he offered me that he want to publish it. And this will come about. The museum will always be willing to help us best as we could. And well, we got a little way to do it. And I'm, like I said it before also, I'm always open to talk to people. Especially with trauma, what I went through in life. For example, I will tell you, some survivors didn't tell their children what I went through and what happened. And those children grow up, and unfortunately their parents were no longer. So I came to us in the museum, or we know something about their parents. And when I've heard when people didn't want to give in their testimonies, that I'm doing the wrong thing, because the only way that the present and future generation can learn about it, the testimonies and the eyewitness of the survivors, what they write down, the memoirs, and I talked many, many times about it. And I'm sure I will be able to help those people to understand that trauma is a destruction for human beings. And if I find the right people to talk to and to help them, so I can come out of it, well, I will be always damaged, because those scars are forever.
And I think also with regards to bullying and harassment, even before the Holocaust, Abram was bullied a lot as a child in Lodge. And in the book, he talks about that his father taught him a lot from a young age and how to deal with that kind of bullying and harassment, him and his sisters, because they were getting it all the time. And so, yeah, in the book, there is a lot of detail about him growing up being bullied and how he dealt with it and his attitude towards it even before the war.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question for Avram while we have this opportunity? No? Okay. Yep, there's one over here, right in the third row, I think.
Just here.
I can't see the light.
I'll tell you. No, it's very bright.
Thank you, Abram. I know you quite well, and your wife, and I've talked to you many times. Look, I know you've given a promise that you will do your best in your life to tell the story, to let everybody know how it was. What I want to know, what really gave you the strength? What kept you going? Did you come very close to giving up at any stage? And what actually kept you going through? Thank you.
Well, I was never ready to give up. Why I, with a friend even in Birkenau, even Auschwitz, when we saw somebody was ready to give up, we approached this person, we have to be very careful, and we told him, well, the Nazis want us dead one way or another. We shouldn't oblige. As long as we have life, we got hope.
Thank you. I think there was also some of the wisdom from your father as well that played into you having that strength. Is that correct?
Your dad.
Well,
Your dad, how he instilled that strength.
oh, well, my dad, of course. I was born in a Bundist family. My father was a revolutionary at the beginning of the 20th century. He came from a very religious family, and my grandfather, my Zayda, was a teacher of religion.
And can I just explain what Bund is for people who don't know? So Abram's family were not religious. So Abram's dad and mum and their family were not religious.
No, but we, for example, it kept all the Jewish traditions. And we fought for the Jewish people all the time, because it's in those days when it was even when the Russians, the Tsar, occupied this part of Poland. You see, my father was a rebel. Well, my grandfather suffered from it, but he realized that this is the only way. In the rest, well, in the book.
But it's definitely true that one of the things I picked up from the book was the influence of your parents and how important that is in giving you those sort of values, and there was no doubt that played a big role in the way you approached the very difficult events of your life.
That's right. Just saying that your dad had a very big influence on your strength and your attitude.
Well, I've got some carers what are looking a bit after me, because I manage it somehow by myself. But I always try to engage them. And here in this room now, there are carers what are with me. Some are like my family now. I've got here in the room, I don't know how many, and I got also Australian families, what I met in the museum. And we are so close friends for life for the last 25 years. I live with the family all those years. We went through some tragedies together and some great times together. And also Italian family. Unfortunately, this family is now a bit different, but I'm not going to divulge it, you see. So from all, I always try to engage people. And if I don't know, I try to help them understand what the Jewish people went through. Never in the human history an event like this happened. And well, and I'm proud that they are my friend. Now we've got other friends for life on the left from me, Fiona and her family. And this I cherish very much in Zesha also.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? If not, okay. So I just want to let you know that the book is going to be out very shortly, and you can go online, just Google Strength of Hope, Avram Goldberg, and you can pre-order it. I wanted to thank a few people. I'd like to thank Martin Hughes from Affirma Press, who first had the vision to realise how powerful Avram's story is, and also to Fiona Harris, who's done such an excellent job of capturing it and putting those words together, which is no mean feat. To the Glen Ira Storytelling Festival. Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you. Glen Ira Storytelling Festival, and particularly Ellie Credlin and her team who've put this event together. Thank you. To the councillors for supporting the festival, to my team at the Melbourne Holocaust Museum, and we'll be reopening to the public probably early next year, and we can't wait to invite you all to our new museum. And finally to Avram Goldberg, who's just an outstanding individual, 97 years young, a Holocaust survivor, restaurateur, volunteer for nearly 40 years, an accomplished speaker, and soon to be a published author, who's tireless in his pursuit of a better tomorrow. He's a man who firmly believes that sharing his life story, and particularly the events of the Holocaust, can help inspire a better future. So thank you, and thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jayne. Thank you so much, Jayne.
Thank you, Jay.